Ow! Greetings YouTube, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon, and welcome to another Defiance review. Alright, so today the episode was Down in the Ground Where the Dead Men Go. Alright, so this one picks up right where the last one left off. You still have the indigent who was responsible for blowing up the shield around Defiance. He's still in custody. And you also have a little scene showing where one of the Castathans who had deserted while in the middle of the battle against the Vulge. That's how they're pronounced now. I finally know how to pronounce it. So, one of the Castathans who was in the battle against the Vulge, who had deserted, is captured out in the forest by Daytak and his people, and are put through a Castathan purification ceremony, which is pretty much no different than breaking somebody on the rack. They have him strung up and his arms and legs connected to scales where Castathans just throw stones in these weighted baskets which continuously stretch him out. Yeah. So, but it's not really shown whether or not this is supposed to be to death or just for a certain amount of time. Although it is suggested that it must be to the point of death. Now, we have... Alright, so we have Nolan coming in during the ceremony trying to break it up, but then the mayor comes in and tells him, you know, that's not the way we do this. We have an understanding with all the races. As a matter of fact, she gives a little bit of explanation as to why there are not that many Erathians in Defiance, because the Erathians refused vaccinations at one point in time, and they were dying of all these diseases, so the town basically forced vaccinations on the Erathians, and most of the Erathians either tried to fight back or left town. And the ones that did try to fight back, well, it was unfortunately a slaughter because, well, the authorities in Defiance, of course, had much more advanced weaponry. The Erathians only had like clubs, and they had Votech weapons. So, unfortunately, as much as he hates it, Nolan has to put up with the Castathan's way of dealing with people who they've felt that who have committed a crime. It's this grand religious ceremony. They're all dressed in these fancy robes and chanting like something that sounds like a Gregorian chant, but in another language, aside from Latin, of course. Anyway, so what happens, we switch over to this little okay, at the end of the first episode, and I don't remember if I said this in my last video or not, but there was a little clandestine meeting between some guy and the former mayor of Defiance. And then you don't know what the whole plan is, but it seems that they've been trying to destroy the city. They're trying to get at something in the mines. And so no one knows what that is exactly. But at the end of this episode, I guess this must be a clue, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So anyway, the guy who was talking in that restaurant with the former mayor about the failed plan where they were trying to get the Vulge to come in and basically kill off everyone in the city, he goes into the hospital where the indigene who had been responsible for taking down the force field around the city, where he's still being treated. He's all cut up really bad, and he injects something into his head. I guess it must have been something that wakes indigenes up. They're not really given much information. All it is he wakes up and is freaking out, and he sees what he injected him with, and he said, "You were trying to kill me." And the guy explains that, no, we're giving you another chance. Don't blow it this time. And he's like, please don't make me do this again. He's like, and the guy tells him, just keep focused. Do what you got to do. So he puts on a pair of coveralls and hauls butt out the town. And then, of course, later on, Nolan gets wind of this Indogene, escaping, and the reason why is because he took a material called gulenite. Now, it's not really explained in the TV series what gulenite is, but if you've read some of the stuff that's been online about the series, a lot of the stuff is connected with the game. Gulenite is a material that was formed when the arc fall happened and the surface of the Earth was terraformed. It's some sort of material that must be native to the excuse me, must be native to the home worlds of the Votans. It seems, from the way that they refer to it, it seems like it's some sort of a power source. Almost similar to, like, if you ever watched Stargate, what Naquadah was, which was the material that made up the Stargates and most of the gold and the ancient technology. But all that aside, it's really powerful stuff. So this Indogene steals a lot of gulenite, goes into the mines, blows up the area that he was behind, and goes down into, well, what was once St. Louis. Interestingly enough, some of the cities survived more or less intact after the Arcfall event. They said that the mountains or earth formed over part of the city, keeping it intact. So they go deep down into the mines, and you see pretty much an enormous ruined city underground. It's actually quite beautiful. And also, there's a lot of life forms that exist underground now. It's quite an interesting sight. It's the people who are the designers for the backdrops and settings and the backdrops and settings did a wonderful job with this series, and you can tell they put a lot of love into it. It seems like the Sci-Fi Channel is really trying to roll out the red carpet for this series. It's quite visually appealing, both the aliens and also the settings and such. So anyway, you find out where this guy was headed. Oh, and I forgot to tell you this. Of course, since it's in the mines. Macaulay, the guy who's like one of the pillars of the community, aside from DecKrash, he is going along. He's going into the mines. Well, of course, this is the Indogene who killed his son, so he's got a bone to pick with him. He already had to stop himself from killing him the first time, so he's going down into mines. And Nolan is the one who's following him to try to get this guy and to make sure that Macaulay doesn't, kill him. He wants him alive because they need him for questioning. So they go into Old St. Louis and find out where this guy was headed, which is an old nuclear power plant. He had some more gulenite with him, so you can pretty much figure what he was trying to do. Now, all the while, you have the stuff that's going on back up on the surface, with the mayor of town planning on leaving, and though she's speaking really nice words to the current mayor, when she meets up with that other guy who you never figure out who he is. It's just some guy who wears really cool shades. Looks almost like a pimp. But anyway, she's talking about how she needs to go and say goodbye to other people, and how she's taking no pleasure in what she has to do because she loves this town and love the people in it. So they're still not telling us exactly what's going on. All we know is that there's something in the mines that they want to get to, and they're trying to find a way to get to it without, I guess, without other people in the way. Maybe, I guess there's no way they can get to it with Defiance being right there. And of course, there's a lot of friction going on in Macaulay's household with his daughter, now betrothed to marry DecKrash and Shtama's son, excuse me. Oh my god. Anyway, betrothed to marry DecKrash and Shtama's son, and of course, Macaulay, who hates DecKrash's guts, doesn't want to have anything to do with that, and is like on the verge of almost disowning his daughter. But his other son, the son's still alive, talks him out of it. And, he's a father who's hurting because of the loss of his son, and so he's a man on edge. So anyway, in the mines, I'm still getting over that cold, people. In the mines, they managed to stop the Indogene from setting off the bomb, And in this, there's a really tense moment where Macaulay is, trying to make the decision whether or not to kill him. Finally, I guess his better judgment wins over because Nolan talks him out of it. But this indigene basically, he's trying to talk him into killing him. He wants to die. And, well, you could pretty much figure out why. I mean, it's a pretty obvious thing. He doesn't want to talk. So finally, whenever Macaulay stands down, the indigene pretty much takes charge, grabs the gun, and shoots himself with it. And then it just basically says, "Tell Amanda I'm sorry." Amanda's the mayor. So he never really gives any kind of information. So he dies, and the secret dies with him. So we still got people none the wiser. And during this time up on the surface, and this is one thing I forgot to say, you have, oh good lord, Irissa, of course, Nolan's adopted daughter, is watching this whole Casathan purification ceremony, and she basically can't stand it anymore and goes and cuts the guy loose. And of course, this pisses off the Castathans, and she goes and then, well, the deputy, who seems to be making a pretty good name for himself in the story. I forget his name, but he's basically the former chief lawman's deputy, and he and Irissa seem to have a good amount of chemistry. They seem to work really well with each other. She seems to be his, he seems to be her stabilizing force, kind of telling, look, you don't want to do this kind of thing. But he backs her up, firing off his shotgun and stopping the Castathans from pretty much ripping Irissa apart. And so they drag the guy who was strung up into the sheriff's office and keep him in their custody, claiming that he's arresting him for loitering. And so by the time all the guys from the mine return to Defiance, there's a big old standoff going on now at the law office and at the sheriff's office, and pretty much Daytak's pissed, the Castathans are pissed, and finally the mayor steps in and says, "Look, there's got to be some way we can do this." She comes in and pardons this Castathan of his crimes, and Daytak, especially once everyone else comes in, and, well, of course, Macaulay wants to get a piece of Daytak, but, holds himself back. They pretty much tell him, look, we don't there's no reason for needless bloodshed. And so, surprisingly, Daytak stands down and says, well, your wisdom has touched my heart, so, lets him be. And at the end, there's a big funeral for the 40-some-odd people who died in the battle against the Vulge, and then you just see a lot of, switching from one scene to another. In it, there's a lot of lead-ins to, I guess, what further episodes are going to be about. Macaulay is searching through his dead son's room, trying to figure out what was the reason why he had any kind of dealings with this indigene. And he finds a secret compartment in one of his drawers. He opens it up, and there's a lot of money in it, and some strange golden alien glyph. It looks like a whole bunch of twists and spirals and turns all woven together. It's about the size of a hand, and has a whole bunch of I think those are indigene glyphs on it. So we're left wondering what that is. And then it switches over to another scene showing the Castathan who was strung up earlier with his family, and his family is serving him something to drink over a stove fire. And then he turns around and stands up, and he's following Daytak out of his house, and he tells him, thank you for at least allowing me to spend some time with my family. And he says, this is an honorable and brave thing you've done. And then he shows Daytak unsheathing his energy blade. So you pretty much can figure out what's what's going on this time. And so you have then you have the scene switching to Nolan talking to Irissa, and then all of a sudden you hear screaming outside, and you open the door, and of course they see the Castellan that was strung up. Now he's dead, and that's pretty much how it ends. So in the end of this, I have to admit this was a fairly good episode. Man, I have to admit this show has some very good writing. They're able to put a lot of subplots and plots and weave a lot of interesting uh, story threads into 1 hour. I mean, this had a lot going on, and its pacing was very good. It didn't feel like it was leaving anything dragging. They're getting some pretty decent acting here. Even the aliens are not terribly alien. Um, that can be both a good thing and bad thing. Depends on what kind of a sci-fi nerd you are. Me, I think it's pretty cool. They're trying to just make this into something you can relate to, I believe. So they're toning down some of the more aliens. I mean, they only had one what would they call it? Sense off. They only had one sense off that was with the mining crew, and he really didn't have a role. He just had a whole bunch of those weird grunts and looking like a gigantic orangutan. Uh, but you know, they got some. They're doing a lot with this series, and it's amazing the amount of stuff that they're able to put in, you know, in just one episode. And so I'm very, very impressed by this episode. It wraps up one thing, opens up more story threads very neatly, very well paced. The beginning was a little bit generic for me, just in the case of, yeah, we see strange, barbaric, alien ritual going on here, and we want to put a stop to it. And though I can sympathize with Nolan in that regard, you know, I would have to have sided with the mayor on this, saying, you know, it's not your place to stop this. These are beings from another world. They have a different culture. You know, yeah, it may seem barbaric to us, but we have no right to sit here and enforce that. Or we could at the very least tell them don't practice it in the city because you're going to be offending a lot of people. There's a lot of other ways they could have gone about it. I think Nolan being Mr. Gung-Ho Cowboy there, well, okay, we can say that that is trying to show an aspect of his personality, and in the end, when Irissa, you know, cut him down, you're kind of wondering, okay, what's going on here? Why is she doing it? I mean, you can see that she was bottling up a lot of anger while watching this whole deal, but in the end, she did explain, I don't like chains. And there's this one part in the episode where you see her wrists. It looked like there were some nasty scars where somebody might have roped her up or something like that. So there must be something in her past about it. Irissa is turning out to be a kind of an interesting character, despite the fact that she seems to be just, you know, sort of a taciturn grouch, I guess, who's very quick-tempered. Those characters I find annoying, but if played right, can turn out to be very interesting at the very least. And I do like how they have her character playing off with the deputy, whose name I cannot remember. I'm gonna have to just get a piece of paper and just start writing down the names. Right now I'm just reading a lot of them off of Wikipedia. Sorry, people, I'm just terrible with names. But as the story progresses, I think that I'll start remembering them with no problem. Anyway, so you're seeing some really good acting, getting a little bit more into the lives of the people, have conversations between Daytak and Stammen. You can see she's, you know, she's like, She's like the Lady Macbeth to Daytax Macbeth. She's wielding most of the power here, or at least kind of subtly manipulating him with those feminine charms thing going on. Especially, they have a pretty cool little conversation between Shtama and Macaulay's daughter, involving the story, something about Daytax's past. And I'll leave that for y'all to watch. I don't want to give away all the secrets here. I pretty much gave away the overall plot, but it's still something, of course, much better to be watched than me just describing it. All in all, this episode earns a solid 8.5 in my view. Great episode all around. Could have used a few more aliens if you ask me, but that's just my pickiness. I'm a big sci-fi nerd. I love my aliens. So anyway, so I think that's about it. That's all I have to say about this episode. Can't wait for the next. If y'all are getting interested in Defiance, just hey, I would love to know what you think about the show. Leave a comment down below in the comment section. As always, keep it civil. And so until next week, everybody. I'll see you until then. And hope we get a lot of more people watching this great show. And seems like it's off to a really good, strong start. I remember when I was doing my Terra Nova reviews, and yeah, that was the problem I had with Terra Nova, is that the stories were a little on the weak side until they got near to the end. This is getting off to a really strong start. I'm enjoying it. I hope you all are too. So, until next time, everyone, DecKrash, better known as Brandon, stay lucky and stay blessed. Take care.